Well, in previous topic we understood about the tap interface, where the production traffic which passes through from your switch to internet. Maybe there is like your existing firewall. We were sending the traffic to Palo Alto firewall, and we monitor those traffic as an IDS. IDS, which means as an intrusion detection system, where you can monitor the traffic and you can take action maybe on your this existing firewall, or depend upon the service security you have. Now the question is, once you have this Palo Alto firewall, which is very costly, then using as an IDS is just going to limit you, for certain capability, because this firewall is capable of doing a lot of things. Or now you might be thinking, I don't want to use this firewall as an IDS, because we are not like the huge banking sector where we can put all the money on this one firewall just for the monitoring. But we want to use this firewall as an intrusion prevention system, which is also known as an IPS, right? So what it does basically is not only detect the intrusion, but it also takes the action. But we also do not want to put this firewall which is actually going to interrupt the traffic. For example, you have this one of the firewall in your enterprise office as an existing firewall. So putting this firewall directly into your production network, it might going to disrupt the traffic, because you might don't know how this firewall is gonna behave, right? So what you can do is basically you can put the firewall in middle of your production, and you can just try to understand what is going through. But at the same time, you can also take the action if the traffic you find which is not good as a security reason. So how could you do that, right? So there come our today's topic about the virtual wire. In our earlier design, what we saw, we had the Palo Alto firewall which was parallel to switch, but in here you can see now we have put the firewall in between your production traffic and the internet. Here you might still have your existing firewall, right? And this is your ISP router and the connected to internet. So what we basically going to do here, we're going to create the policies on this Palo Alto firewall, and it is still going to allow the traffic which is going from in to out, and traffic coming from out to in. Basically it is coming from firewall, so it is not just allowing everything, right? So the reason behind allowing this traffic in the policy, there you can monitor the traffic as well as you can take action. So our first policy might gonna be allow any it's going from in to out, and then after that, if you find any traffic which is like it seems suspicious to you, so what you can do is you can monitor the traffic as an IDS on the firewall, and you can also take an action as per the IPS on this particular firewall. So you can create one more policy just about this any rule, and you can have the restriction. For example, the people are going for the torrent, they are downloading something, so you can block the traffic on this Palo Alto firewall in vWire section. So you are not kind of interrupting any traffic, but you are taking the action based upon the monitoring you are doing. So let's configure one of the vWire interface. So before we jump upon the configuration part, let me tell you one thing. On the Palo Alto firewall, we are going to do two interfaces. So one is going to be in and one is going to be out. So that is the two interfaces going to be the part of the vWire. Okay, so let's go and configure the vWire. Well, the configuring of the vWire is quite simple. So all you need to do is you need to select the interfaces which are going to be the part of the vWire, right? So we are going to select two interfaces, which is 1/4 belong to in and 1/5 belong to out. So let's configure them. So we'll go to 1/4, and first let's give it a name which is vWire in. Okay, and this is going to be useful, I'll show you later. And then interface type, since it is going to be vWire, so let's give it a name vWire. Then we do not need NetFlow. Now here is going to ask you the vWire. I had created one of the vWire monitoring. Let's create one of the different vWire, which is vWire production, for example. Now you're going to see like interface 1 and interface 2 in here, which says none. and if I do it like down arrow, even I do not see any kind of interfaces. So let's not worry about that, just press OK, because anyhow we have selected this interface 1/4, right? Now vWire production has been selected because this is something going to be a group for the interface in and out. Now next part come, which is the security zone. This is important while we would be going to handle the traffic. So we need to create zone. So let's create vWire zone in, because this belong to the kind of inside interface zone, right? Then we have to press OK, and then in advanced setting it is going to be default. If your interface is not coming up because of the link and duplex, you need to just play with that, otherwise it should be all right. Let's press OK. Right now let's go to interface 5. Let me show you the comment about, right? We have put the vWire in, so this is useful when you are monitoring the traffic or when you have monitoring server, right? When you configure this interface, then you are going to get this kind of description in your monitoring tool. So this comment is going to be useful at that point. Now let's select the 1/5 as an outside interface. So we will give the name, which is vWire out, okay, because it's going to be face the outside kind of internet. Then let's select the vWire. Here it's going to be the same vWire zone, because sorry, not zone but vWire group, because these are the two interfaces going to be participate into the similar vWire production traffic, but they are going to be a different zone because we want them to be handled as an inside and outside, right? So let's select the zone and give it a name, which is vWire zone out, for example. So we have created two zones, one belong to in and out, and let's press OK. So now we have created the vWire. If you have the link which is already been connected, you are going to get the link stated as in green, as we can see in here, but we do not have the connectivity. That's the reason we do not see anything here. So let's consider these are the connected interface. Now we'll have to go to policies and create the policy. So let's consider we even do not have any policy in here. It's just, you know, fresh firewall. So all you need to do is you need to create one policy. Let's go to add and create the policy. So let's name it as a vWire traffic, and it's going to be outside, right? Like traffic is going from in to out. So let's give it a outbound, you know, traffic name. Now it's going to ask you what would be your source. Since the source is our vWire in as an inside interface, so we're going to select in. Then the destination is going to be, our source is going to be an in here, right? So destination we're going to select as a vWire out. So this is, we have created the in and out source as source and destination. So we have selected source and destination any. Then application is going to be any, because you are using this firewall for monitoring purpose as well as restricting the traffic. It's totally based upon when you see something is happening different. So we'll press OK in here. So this is one of the rule being created. Let's take it on top, so you can see the rule in here. Now you can clone this rule and you can just, you know, flip something, but let's create fresh rule like vWire traffic inbound. Now traffic is coming from outside to inside, so it's going to be inbound. Now this point my source is going to be vWire zone out, because traffic is coming from out, and going to be destination in, so vWire zone in. So application any, service any, action allow, and OK. So what we did basically on Palo Alto firewall, we selected one of the interface 1/4, this is 1/5, and we give it a name as a in and out. Now what is going to happen, basically the traffic is going to the firewall and they're going to consider as a zone. We created like a vWire zone, right? Zone in, and this is something zone out, right? Sorry. So the traffic is going to hit 1/4 and then it's going to out via 1/5. So here something is going to monitor the traffic. You can see the section under the monitoring, in this section under the ACC, what is going on, and if the traffic is coming in there also, you're going to monitor all the details in ACC section and the monitoring as well. Now let's go back to firewall again and try to understand how we can restrict the traffic. For example, let me clear the screen. One of the user in here, this person is using the torrent, and you see on the firewall activity the person is using torrent and the source is 192.168.10.50. this is the person. It can be like user ID. If you have configured the user ID, that is something you can also restrict the traffic based on user ID. But let's say this is the IP we want to restrict, and all we need to do is we need to create policy where we can block the traffic. Now let's go to firewall and block this traffic. Now on the firewall, what we need to do is we need to just select here, just add one of the policy. It has to be on top, because if we are going to be put it below as a number 3 sequence, for example, if you're going to put the traffic which is below vWire outbound and inbound traffic, then what might going to happen? The traffic is not going to hit the rule we're going to create. Now let's block that torrent traffic in here. So in order to block the traffic, let's create one of the policy called block torrent. Right now we need to define what would be your source. So we need to create the traffic is coming from vWire zone in, and who is your source you want to block. So we understood one of the source which was 192.168.10.50 maybe belong to VLAN 10, and we want to block this particular source, very smart source. So going to destination, and in here you need to define going to out. Now in destination, if you know the destination, you can block it in here. Now let's go to application section, because this is the place we can handle or control the traffic. But if you know one of the specific port is going to utilize by that source, then you can also use this service or URL category, where you can define, okay, one of the port is utilized by the torrent, and you can block the traffic in here. But since it is torrent traffic, then they are going to be keep changing their ports. So what you can do is basically you can define the torrent traffic in here. Let me show you one thing here, one of the problem. So let's go and search for the torrent, right? And after searching for torrent, I see only BitTorrent and BitTorrent sync. This is something, kind of a demo firewall. That is the reason we see very limited application. But if you have live firewall, it is going to fetch, the application from Palo Alto cloud, and it is going to download too many applications which belong to the torrent. So you need to add all those torrents in here, and if the user is coming from inside and trying to access the torrent, if any of this torrent is match in here, it's going to block. And the most of the the torrent are actually defined under the Palo Alto firewall. You need to select all of them, but you can also know which are the torrent basically used by the that particular source. So what you can do is basically, let me do one thing. Let me press just OK in here. We'll come back to this policy again. So if you go to monitoring section, what will happen here, you can monitor the traffic. For example, what will happen here, you're going to see like source zone is coming from vWire in, and then going to source zone vWire out, and the source is going to be 192.168, and your traffic which was coming from 1050. And if you have source user and destination, you might going to see the destination, but since it is like torrent traffic, it is keep changing all the time. And here you might see the application, which application that person is using. So you can utilize that application name from here and add into the application section, because that is something you can control the traffic. Or you can also see the what is the port is being utilized. If this port is going to remain 443 or maybe 8443, something like that, you can also control the traffic based upon that particular the port level. But let's say we understood about the traffic was utilizing by the BitTorrent, application. So let's block the application only. So let's go to policy again, and let's select the same policy which was created to BitTorrent. So now let's select the same policy which is block torrent. Let's go to application. We have blocked the BitTorrent. Let's block the other any torrent. So let's go to torrent and torrent sync, right? So we have blocked these two application, but action we need to define block because default is going to be allow. So we need to say deny. So if the traffic is coming in, just block. If you want to keep the traffic as coming in, this is something going outbound, right? So if you want to keep as a in, so you can also create one more rule coming in, but as we know the person is going from in to out, so outbound is fine. But the sequence of this rule is very important. As you can see, the sequence is 2, right? Now the problem is if you are going to keep the same sequence, then this rule is not going to work, because the problem is the rule is going to be hit by this sequence number 1. So if the traffic is going to be outbound by using the sequence number 1, this rule is not going to hit. So this rule is like kind of useless. So what we need to do is we need to basically take this rule on the top. So let's do one thing, let's select this rule, and in order to move the rule, either you can drag or you can have option in here. You can go to move and it's going to show move to top, or maybe one row up, or move down, or maybe just go to the bottom. So we need to just put it as a top. So this rule is going to come as top. Now what will happen if the traffic is coming from this particular source, going to hit the firewall, and it has to be get denied. So that is something you can control your traffic by using the vWire. So basically you're not disrupting the production traffic. So let's go to diagram again. So as we understood, if you have the existing firewall on your production traffic, we are not going to disrupt any traffic, but what we are doing basically, we are using the rule called outbound, right, and rule called inbound, right? These are the two rules where we are going to monitor the traffic, and if we found any particular traffic which we want to block, we can keep creating the traffic above that. Like we created one for the torrent and we block that specific the traffic. So that is the use of the vWire, where you're not going to disrupt your production traffic by eliminating your existing firewall. So what you're doing basically, you're controlling the traffic by using this Palo Alto firewall. So this is the beautiful use of Palo Alto firewall by using vWire. So this is for now, and I will see you in the next section of Palo Alto interface type. See ya.